cast, and then we will be fully compliant.
Hey, Susan, my internet is acting up, so just a heads up, I'm trying to fix it, but just so you know if I'm not answering.
Okay.
Okay, chairs, we are ready to go.
All righty. Then I will go ahead and call to order this meeting of the Camarillo and Oxnard Airport Authorities. And we will start with a roll call, please.
Okay, for Camarillo Airport Authority, Supervisor Long.
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez has not yet joined us. Mayor Molche,
Present.
Vice Mayor Santangelo,
Here.
Scott Barrett. Mr. Barrett.
I'm here.
Perfect, thank you. Camarillo has a quorum. For Oxnard Airport Authority, Supervisor Long.
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez has not yet joined us. Councilmember Perello.
Here.
Councilmember Lopez.
Here.
Walter Calhoun, I do not believe has joined us. Dr. Fussell.
Here.
Oxnard has a quorum.
Great, thank you.
And I
Okay.
did note, Chair, that Supervisor Ramirez joined as an attendee, so I'm promoting.
Okay.
Just a correction. I believe Dr. Fussell is the public member and there is an alternate. So not Mr. Calhoun any longer.
It's Mark King, and he's flying from Tallahassee to Santa Barbara, and I don't know whether he's landing or not.
Okay, but you are, Dr. Fussell, you are the public member on this board now, currently, correct?
I think that's correct, yes.
Yes, okay.
As a point of clarity, this is Keith from the airport. That actually takes effect March 1st. It was different for Oxnard than it was Camarillo. So technically, Dr. Fussell starts his public member participation on March 1st.
Whoops,
So,
I spoke out of turn. Thank you for correcting me. Thank you.
no problem.
I just wanted to say I had some trouble getting in, but here I am. Thank you.
We're glad you're here.
Welcome aboard.
Okay, we need to do Pledge of Allegiance. Supervisor Ramirez, would you lead us?
Yes, please rise, everyone, and place your hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
The flag of the United States of America, for which it stands, one nation under God, with liberty, justice for all.
Liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, and I'm always tempted to say amen. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So now we move on to agenda review. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
We do not from the airport.
Okay. We'll move on to approval of minutes. Can we
I'll
get a
move
motion?
approval of Camarillo.
Okay, a motion. I'll second.
Excuse me.
And we'll go ahead and we'll do a roll call vote on that.
Okay. Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez,
Yes.
Mayor Molche,
Yes.
Chair Santangelo,
Yes.
Scott Barrett.
A question, am I eligible to vote on this since I was not on the authority at the time the minutes were taken?
You may need to abstain from the vote.
I'll abstain.
That motion passes unanimously with one abstention by Mr. Scott Barrett.
Okay. We will move on to public comments, and everybody has to bear with me a little bit. I am new at sharing on Zoom, so I will do my best. If I miss anybody, feel free to.
Susan?
Yeah.
Can we also approve the minutes for the Oxnard side as well? I think we need to do that.
Thanks for the reminder. Yeah, I'll just go ahead. Do we have a motion for the Oxnard minutes?
I'll motion to approve. Thank you.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perallo,
Yes.
Chair Lopez,
Yes.
Eugene Fussell.
Here, yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Okay, so like I was saying, I'm new at this. Okay, so it's time for public comment, and I believe I see one person with two people with a hand raised. So Doug Tauber,
Anna, do you want to make a statement?
Yes, Chair Santangelo, may I make a statement to the public?
please do.
Thank you.
Hello?
Okay, if you would like to be added to the public comment queue, please be connected via Zoom. If not already connected and wish to make a public comment, you can find the Zoom link on the last page of the meeting agenda, which can be found at vcairports.org/meeting-calendar. If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item number 5, please press the raise hand button now, or if you're calling in today, press star then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. Thank you.
Okay, this is Dave, and we have Doug Tauber and John George who are on deck. So let's start with Doug. You are welcome to unmute and show your video, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I want to get right to the point here because I've been attending these meetings for some time now. And I'm hearing a lot of things being said that concern me as I continue to listen to comments made by members of both the authority, the Airport Authority, and the Advisory Commission. As I watch through all these meetings, it has become apparent that money is being continually spent on the upkeep of Oxnard Airport for regional airline service that is, and its Part 139 certification. Some members of both bodies seem to be under the impression that commuter flights at Oxnard are going to return someday. For 28 years now, I've worked as an airline pilot at American, and at one time routinely flew into Oxnard as a commuter pilot. I'm no marketing guru, but my experience in the industry has made me very much familiar with my industry's direction and marketing practices. And I would like to enlighten your awareness on how the airline industry's business model has changed over the last 15 to 20 years. When small 19 to 30 passenger turboprops were serving many small airports like Oxnard 20 years ago, the high volume of these commuter flights actually created ATC traffic jams at LAX and other large airports. And because of the smaller turboprop aircraft approach speeds were mismatched with heavier airliners, it caused aircraft separation issues with the final approach controllers, resulting in holding aircraft on the ground for inbound flights to the hub airport. Also, the limited gate space available at LAX caused more delays on the taxiways. The congestion was so harmful to our flight schedules that it caused heavy numbers of misconnecting passengers. Something had to be done to keep the integrity of our schedules, ability to get our passengers to their connecting flights. Fast forward to the present, you will find that the airline industry has shifted away from serving smaller airports to serving larger and medium-sized hubs such as LAX and Santa Barbara Airport. Coupled with using 75 to 100 seat regional jets that have replaced the turboprop fleet, it is not economically feasible for airlines to serve small airport that's less than an hour's drive to a medium-sized hub like Santa Barbara or Burbank, and LAX, which is at the most an hour and 45 minutes with traffic. The airlines pulled out of Oxnard almost 14 years ago, and in that time, our economy has seen some very robust times. But during that period, they never came back. That right there should tell you that a paradigm shift has occurred. That being said, in closing, I would like to encourage you all to reevaluate your decisions on funding extravagant projects at Oxnard, like building $14 million runways designed to support heavy regional jets that will never be using it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Tauber. Mr. George, you may unmute yourself, show your video if you like, and you have 3 minutes.
Recording in progress. I'm having difficulty starting my video. So I'll just speak without the video. I just want to take this opportunity to introduce myself to the board during the public comment period. My name is John George. I am the interim president of CAHOTA. That is because Scott Bear recently resigned his president position, as you know, because he was appointed to the airport authority. And so I've been named the interim president in the meantime. Our core group that is still intact, that has been talking with the county for about 5 years now, are still in discussions with the county over the new lease. We are very familiar with the lease and we are working towards the goal of finishing it. We're going to have a general meeting on the 19th of March for a board election, and I will do my best to try and drop the interim name from the president's job and become the president of Cohota. I do have a hangar at Oxnard. I own a hangar at Oxnard. I also own a 1964 Piper Comanche. That is my pride and joy. And believe me, it was hard to find an airplane that was almost as old as I am, but I did. And I can't tell you enough that it is a great benefit and a pleasure to be able to hangar my airplane at Oxnard within about 5 minutes of my home and be able to fly out of Oxnard Airport. You know, I don't have to tell you that these are well-run, busy airports, and we have the Department of Airport staff to thank for that, because as you know, as you've seen probably on Camarillo during a Saturday or Sunday, there is a lot of traffic going in and out of the airport. Along with the DOA staff, I'd also like to thank the new director, Keith Freitas. He has already demonstrated his commitment to completing the lease, and his knowledge and enthusiasm has been great so far. We're really pleased to be able to work with him and get this lease finished up. I'm very optimistic, and if I could show you the video, which I'm not on video, I'd be holding my fingers up and saying we are this close to getting it done. We're working on a 21-page, 56-paragraph lease that's full of restrictions, prohibitions, penalties, and we are in agreement on almost all of it. But pilots, as a rule, are not lawyers, with the exception of Scott and a few others. What we're asking for is just the chance, in the case of a minor dispute, to mediate for a non-binding solution before both sides have to lawyer up. If I can use a really corny analogy here, Cohota and its members are in an airplane. We have been in a holding pattern for about 4 years now. We want to land. There's a lot of people on the ground that want us to land. All we're waiting for is clearance from the tower. We have faith that Mr. Temple can give us the words to clear us to land. Please let us land and get this accomplished. Thank you.
Chairs, we also have written comments, and Anna will be reading those out.
The first comment is from Art Munson. It reads, "To whom it may concern, I would like to express my frustration on the constant flow of touch-and-go aircraft over our community of Seabridge and Oxnard. From my understanding, aircraft are to remain north of Woolley, but seldom do. Many times their altitude seems to be much lower than the requirement. Thank you." End of comment from Art Munson. The next comment is from Phyllis Singer. It reads, "Dear Airport Authority, as a resident of Oxnard Shores for over 30 years, I'm tired of this Ventura County mantra of, quote, put in Oxnard, end quote. Whether it be awful waste dumps, numerous power plants, slag piles at Ormond Beach, almost LNG, and airports, it is always, quote, put it in Oxnard, unquote. It appears we have one symbolic representative of Oxnard Shores on the airport board. I wonder where the other members live. We want no expansion of the airport and have flight school teach at their own cities and circling their neighborhoods with their noise pollution, safety issues, and carbon emissions. Enough is enough in Oxnard. Sincerely, Phyllis Singer." The next comment is from Kelly Baxter. It reads, "Hello, I reside in the Harbor Island condominiums directly off Harbor Island Lane, and we're hearing many, many flyovers every day. When on the balcony or walking around Perimeter Park, we are forced to stop conversations due to incredibly noisy planes flying overhead, often and low elevations. I ask for your assistance by working with the FAA to encourage proper training of the flight school management, the student pilots, and the Oxnard air traffic controllers to encourage safe and sane flying. Secondly, I ask that we work together as the airport authority and as a community to mandate quieter and newer planes to reduce noise and toxic emissions from leaded patrol. I look forward to hearing your progress. Thank you, Kelly Baxter. The last and final comment is from David Cronshaw. It reads, Camarillo Oxnard Airport Authority. As one of the neighborhood council members who monitors the Oxnard Airport flight and CFI training patterns on a daily basis, I wanted to acknowledge and thank the progress of Director of Airports Keith Freitas and Deputy Director Dave Nafee and the airport team have made with their outreach programs to flight training schools and CFIs. They are reaching out and educating local and LA flight schools about our Oxnard Airport voluntary noise abatement procedures. On the weekends, we are now seeing some training flights making right turns after takeoff and conducting their touch and goes using right traffic, as well as more patterns staying above or north of Woolley. However, as Director Keith Freitas mentioned earlier this week at the Aviation Advisory Commission meeting, there is still a lot of work to do with the outreach program. I would also like to respond to two of the commissioners' comments that were made at this week's Aviation Advisory Commission meeting. One, the Oxnard Neighborhood Council's main issue are flight schools conducting repeated training over neighborhoods. Two, the councils have never had a goal to shut the airports down. They are very valuable assets. Three, the councils do not have an issue with regular departures and landings at Oxnard. Four, the councils are not opposed to the return of scheduled passenger flights. Five, in the event of a county disaster, Oxnard has 4 airports within 12 miles. Thank you for hearing my public comments. End of comment from David Cronshaw. That concludes the public comments.
Okay, that's all the public comments that we have this time, and I see none others that have put their hands up.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, let's move on to new business. And since we're starting with Oxnard Airport, I will hand this over to Chair Lopez.
Thank you, Chair Santangelo. I do apologize that my camera is off. I'm having some Wi-Fi issues, so we have the first item, 6A is a presentation on the Portofino place development from a City of Oxnard staff. But I'll hand it over to Mr. Freitas if there's any introduction or anything else you want to go ahead and present.
I don't, other than I want to thank and recognize the City of Oxnard and their team for putting together this item, an important item for the authority to consider. And I just want to welcome them and thank them.
Director Freitas, thank you for that. Is our presentation going to be brought up?
It's going to take a couple of seconds. My apologies. I forgot that you won't be able to furnish it, so I need to locate it. Mr. Colwitz, you sent it to me. Is that right? Via email?
That is accurate, and I can forward it again if need be.
Oh, that'd be great if you could do that real quick, and I don't have to search.
And while I'm doing that, let me just simply, on behalf of the City of Oxnard, thank you and your team for also getting us on this agenda tonight. So thank you very much. And while I'm getting this email over to you, I also want to let you know that the City of Oxnard is joined by some other city members today. I'm Scott Kolwitz, the Planning and Environmental Services Manager. And in addition, I'm joined by my director, Vito Adamitis, as well as Ken Roselle from our City Attorney's Office. And for the particular project, the Portofino Place project, we're joined by several members of the applicant team. Kate Nieswinder, John Carnsdale in particular are on the phone with us today, or on video with us today. And I've sent the presentation over to you, so hopefully that's showing up on your side in just a moment.
All right, very good. I see the issue. I was looking at for a PowerPoint and it is. So let me see if I can find it here in my 3-ring circus.
We sent it over as a PDF document, thinking that would be the easier.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. So.
Alternatively, if I could share my screen, I can control it from here if that makes it easier. But
I would love that. But in order to broadcast to YouTube.
I could forward it right now.
Yeah, I've got it on my screen. I just need to make it visible to the slides here. All right, well, we could go on to a different agenda item while I do this, or we could wait for me to figure this out.
Yep, perhaps maybe we can go to the next item and come back to it when you're ready. Would that be okay with everyone else?
I would support that totally.
Okay, all right, so the next item is item B, approval and authorization for the Director of Airports and on an amendment to consulting services for a contract with Nino and More. Do we have a presentation on that, Mr. Freitas?
We do not have a presentation. It's just a discussion item. So by way of history, the State Water Board has deemed a particular chemical called PFAS that is in the firefighting foam of all emergency apparatus for all airports that have scheduled commercial service, which we have had over the years, obviously. So what the State Water Board has requested of all those not requested, of all those airports is to do analysis. So that was the first round of analysis. They've come back to us and looked at that analysis and asked that we do some additional analysis. And that's an increase in this contract, is to come back and do some soil and groundwater sampling. So we're requesting approval from this authority board to do that additional testing. That's the contract that ultimately we would put before the board. Again, the difficulty for us is this foam that we use for emergency response is required by the FAA. So every airport emergency vehicle has to use this particular foam. And now we've got a state water board that has determined that that chemical is a chemical of concern, and so that's why we're doing this testing. Moving forward, we have put in place a testing process so that the chemical does not leave the vehicle. So it's no longer going into the environment when we do our annual testing, which was the case for decades. And so that's kind of the background, and that's what we're looking for this group to support.
Question.
Thank you. Supervisor Ramirez, go ahead.
Thank you very much. And I am familiar with somewhat with the discussion about PFAS as a major contaminant of drinking water. And I see that this is something, I know we use the foam, God forbid we have an accident. Mr. Freitas, do you know if there's a substitute that is less harmful that could be used, or is this the only one the FAA requires or approves?
Yes, at this point, that chemical is the only one that's approved, but because of this concern, the FAA is in process to find a replacement foam. They have not found that yet, but they are working on it as we speak.
Thank you. Very good.
Mr. Perello?
Thank you, Chair. The question I have is, have there been yellow flags, something up that's more than just a normal look? We're having to expand the size of this contract. Has something come up? And if this is used at airports, is Camarillo facing the same situation? I would assume that if they've been in business for as long as they have, there must have been on-site testing. Are we going to be looking at this countywide?
So the answer at this point is, I think there's a two-part question. Yes, they expanded it because they looked at the analysis, and it's the same thing that I had at my previous airport in Contra Costa County. The water board looked at the initial data and asked for more data. That's their prerogative to do so, and we kind of had to do that. To answer your question regarding Camarillo, because that equipment we don't have commercial service at Camarillo. We don't have that same type of equipment. We don't, at this point, have to do that type of testing at Camarillo. Not required.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions or any comments from the public?
I'll ask a follow-up, Chair.
Sure. Please, go ahead.
Once the testing is completed, what's the turnaround? And if worst case scenarios, what are we looking at as far as a cleanup? Worst case.
Yeah, those are all very good questions. The challenge is that right now there is no federal standard for PFAS, but what we would expect is that we have this analysis and that there would be some sort of cleanup mitigation in the future. Because at this point it's an unfunded mandate, there are several discussions with lobbyists and bills on the federal side, as I mentioned, because it's federally required and has been for decades. We're expecting that there might be some reimbursement to the county for not only the testing, but the cleanup ultimately is what we're expecting. At this point, I can't tell you what that is because the standards aren't even there yet for the cleanup. And the PFAS is in things like Teflon pans, dental floss, Scotch Guard. I mean, this is something that's been in the environment for a long time in many, many different areas. So it's a challenge, to say the least.
Thank you for the open answers. Thank you. Appreciate it.
To the members, could I ask you to say what's on your screen?
There's the Portofino place is the shared screen.
Okay. Then I would say that we can proceed with this presentation as it's displaying. I do confirm that it's the same on YouTube. So I think we can go ahead and deliver this. And
so well, maybe we have the chair wrap up this item and then go from there.
Of course.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Okay, if there aren't any other comments or questions, do we have a motion?
I will motion staff recommendation. Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Can we get a roll vote?
Yes. Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perrello,
Yes.
Chair Lopez,
Yes.
Eugene Fussell. Mr. Fussell?
Yes.
Thank you very much. That motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. So now we'll go back to the first item. Mr. Kolwitz, go ahead.
Thank you, Council or Chair Lopez and members of the Oxnard Airport Authority. Thank you for having us tonight. We're here to talk about the Portofino Place project, which is a new development that's being proposed just on the south side of the Oxnard Airport. I'm going to take you through a presentation sharing it with you. And what we're ultimately asking for is that the Airport Authority finds that this project is an acceptable land use and is consistent with the adopted airport comprehensive land use plan. Just taking you through some graphics. So we mentioned that this is on the south side of the airport. As you can see in this graphic, the general location of the project site is in the yellow orangish circle here, just to the south of the Oxnard Airport, surrounded by existing development. If we go to the next slide. The project description that we have in summary is that we're really looking for a general plan amendment and a zone change to change the available land uses from a business research park into one that would allow some residential medium densities in the form of duplexes. In addition to the land use change, there is a proposal to subdivide the property, 7.6 acres, for the purposes of condominiums, and then ultimately to develop 92-story condominiums. If we could have the next slide. Graphically, if you looked at our general plan and our zoning, this is what it would look like today. The purple blocks being the business research park. And then if we go to the next slide, what you'll see is the residential medium designation. And the residential designation is very similar to what you would find around the rest of the properties, in particular on the south side of the properties. There are many residential projects that are of similar densities. We'll also zoom out a little bit just to show you what's surrounding this project site. But if we can go to the next slide. This is showing the condominium plan that's being proposed. In effect, what we're seeing here is a couple of things. The airport is on the north side of 5th Street. Excuse me. 5th Street itself is a fairly wide arterial road that runs east-west just to the north of the project site. On the very northern portion of the private property, there's a 30-foot landscape buffer that's required per our general plan. And then we finally get into the actual development, which again runs linearly east and west with private roads through it, and the Portofino Place street itself running north and south through the development. If we go to the next slide, please. Today, if we looked at an aerial of what's out there, we would see vacant fields for the project site, but then again, surrounding it, it's all developed property. If we can go to the next slide, please. This is us superimposing the project into the undeveloped site. And again, what we find is residential development that's very similar to what is already in existence. Next slide, please. Simply put, it's a residential project is what's before you. This project is in complete conformance with our R2 standards and similar to what we would find elsewhere around the community. If we can go to the next slide, please. Architecturally, what we're looking at are 2-story projects that are consistent with the height of the R2 zone district. None of these would exceed 25 feet. And if we can go to the next slide. Oops, there we go. One more, please. There we go. This is a rendering of what the proposed development would look like. Some nice R2 condominiums, all 2 stories. Go to the next slide, please. As a way of quick background, this site, it's actually, it's had a long history. It's part of a larger 17-acre project that first began in the early 2000s. In 2004, there was a city council approved general plan amendment and zone change that changed a portion of that 17-acre projects into residential, and then other portions of it into the business research park zone. Consistent with CEQA, a mitigated negative declaration was processed at that point in time and certified. And then over the years, the development team came up with this idea and engaged with us in 2019. The City Council reviewed a pre-application regarding the concept and found it to be generally acceptable. They gave some direction in particular regarding affordable housing that should be built on the site. And we all at the City of Oxnard see this as one of the pieces of filling the RHNA puzzle, not just for the City of Oxnard, but for the state of California's housing crisis as a whole. As we leap forward again, we've actually had our Planning Commission review the project, and they were comfortable with the project as well as it had been conditioned. If we can go to the next slide, please. So I wanted to take a moment here and talk just about the existing and surrounding land uses. So the Portofino project is in the hot pink rectangle, if you will. And as we look to the east of that site, immediately to the east is an elementary school, and then further to the east is a community park. If we went to the west, there's a existing commercial development that's partially completed at this point in time. And then in the orange outline, that's the existing residential community that completely surrounds this entire area. And the densities of those residential developments, again, are consistent with what's being proposed here. So this is really filling in the last piece of the puzzle. If we could go to the next slide, please. One of the reasons why we're here today is that this project, again, highlighted in the pink rectangle, it finds itself within the Oxnard Airport sphere of influence. It also finds itself within the airport height restricted zone, as well as the airport traffic pattern zone. So city staff, when we received this application back in 2019, we engaged with the Oxnard Airport staff, reviewed the project with the airport land use plan to make sure that it was going to be something that was going to be consistent with the plan. In addition, the applicant team has also been in communications with the airport staff over the years. If we can go to the next slide, please. And because this project is within the Oxnard Airport sphere of influence, again, we are directed to engage with the Oxnard Airport Authority for your review, as well as a recommendation on this project. So what we want to do next is essentially take some quick snapshots of how we evaluated this project with the airport land use plan, and we're looking for your concurrence that this is the right way to look at this project. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So the airport land use consistency review, we put our focus really on 3 different sections that we believe are the right areas to look at. One is noise compatibility. The second area is safety compatibility. And then the third area was airspace protection for safe navigation. And the airport land use plan, it's a pretty useful document. It has some strong graphics identifying what relates to what, as well as some graphics and tables to help one figure out if you have a project that is consistent with the plan or not. So if we can go to the next slide. The first one that we'll look at is the noise graphic. So this is straight out of the airport land use plan. And what this shows is the white box, just so it's apparent, is the Portofino Place project location. And immediately north of it are a series of blue contour lines that represent decibels. This project is entirely outside of the 60 decibel noise contours. If we go to the next slide, please. What we find in the airport land use plan is single family and multifamily development is something that would be a conditionally acceptable use if it's found in areas that range between 60 to 65 decibels. But this is a site that's actually outside of even that density or those noise contours. That said, this project has been conditioned to provide disclosures to potential residents and property owners of its location adjacent to the airport. And it would be subject to comply with building code acoustic standards, which really make sure that the interiors of these units would be quiet places. 45 decibels or less inside these units. If we can go to the next slide, please. Safety was something that we took seriously and looked at, and what we find is that the project is within the traffic pattern zone, and we'll see that there are certain standards that go along with that on the next slide. But what we also find is that the project is not within either the runway protection zone or the outer safety zone. In addition, the extended traffic pattern zone is not something that is applicable to the Oxnard Airport. That's only applicable to the Camarillo Airport. So if we go to the next slide, please. As we mentioned, this project site is within the traffic pattern zone. And again, single family and multifamily homes are developments that are conditionally acceptable, provided that it's consistent with a couple of standards. So if we can go to the next slide, we'll look at the standards. This looks for a maximum structural coverage. The project is designed to have 23.5% of the site covered with structures. And the requirement is that the developments be 25% or less in terms of structural coverage. In addition, there's a requirement that there is a navigation easement that's recorded on the property to notify individuals that they're adjacent to an airport and the issues that go along with airports. And the project has been conditioned to provide both the navigation easement as well as disclosures. If we can go to the next slide, thank you. The last one is the airspace protection. And as we mentioned, this is in the height restricted zone. And it's also in one of the transition zones that we can see on the next slide. If we can, yeah, the next slide. This graphic essentially is showing the concentric rings around the airport, and the graphic on the right shows some of the mathematical interpretations and renderings of what the different airspace protection zones would look like in a model. If we can go to the next slide. What we found looking at those projects was that this project remains below the approach and the transitional surfaces, as well as this project has been referred to the FAA, and we did receive a determination of no hazard to air navigation. So from an airspace safety perspective, we find that this project is also consistent. If we can go to the next slide, please. I kind of said this as we went along, but in the very broadest level, as we did our deep dive with the airport staff and the applicant team, we've designed a project that we believe is fully consistent with the airport land use plan. If we can go to the next slide, please. As I mentioned, we did process an environmental document previously in 2004 for the various zone changes and general plan amendments that had happened. And we used that environmental document and processed an addendum for the current project. So if we can go forward one slide. What we found was that the proposed project would be less intense than what had previously been proposed on the site. We also specifically found that the proposal would not create any new significant impacts or increase the severity of any impacts that were previously identified. And all the mitigation measures that were previously identified in the prior environmental document, which did include things like the airport navigation easements, would be folded into the conditions of approval for this project. And if we can go one more slide. Specifically, the conditions that we've incorporated into this project would be to grant the County of Ventura navigation easement over the project site. We require the project to fill out and process Form 7460 with the FAA and to adhere to any of the recommendations that the FAA would make. And then finally, we also include our disclosures to both homeowners as well as renters of both the existence of the Oxnard Airport as well as the helicopter flight paths that are out there. So we're really trying to do our best of getting ahead of any neighbors and adjacency issues by making sure that everyone is fully aware that there is an airport directly north of them across 5th Street. And if we can go one final slide, our recommendation request to the Oxnard Airport Authority is that you find that this is an acceptable land use, and again, consistent with the airport land use plan. And with that, both city staff as well as the applicant team are here to answer any questions that any of you may have. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kolwitz. The first hand I see up is Supervisor Long.
Thank you very much. Knowing about houses and close to areas that could get loud for 1 minute or 5 minutes or whatever, what is the commitment to the builders to ensure that proper windows and insulation is going to be in these apartments? If you go into it, they're not going to be doing the upkeep, and to start off in the right way is really important. So how do we know that that's going to be happening?
Supervisor Long, thank you for that question. I'll start with that one, and then I'm going to turn it over to the applicant team. As part of our plan check process, again, this project will be subject to an acoustic study, and the recommendations of that acoustic study will be required during construction itself. Planning staff, as well as our building inspectors, will be out there to ensure that the buildings are constructed pursuant to those standards. And if I could turn it over to the team, you have a long history of actually owning properties over the long run. So if you could speak to your experience both with those as well as this project, that would be wonderful.
Well, and also if you could, the safety factor. So you say you have to hit 60 as your decimal. Well, that's it could be the max that the window could handle at a certain time. And so I'd like to understand that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's John Carnicel. Thank you, council, and everyone for allowing me to speak and present our project. That's a great question. It's something we're familiar with as we have employed it in our current developments and prior developments, as was spoke about. So not only will we be doing the windows, but the wall systems. We also are insulating the entire house completely. That will be all the interior walls that go along with the insulation of the house, not the exterior, as only would be code compliant. As well as we've addressed noise in the past adjacent to freeway, abutment to Caltrans. And so we're very familiar with what it takes to be substantially lower. We're not going to look to meet the minimum standard. Obviously, that doesn't provide for every chance for there to be a louder noise that could be heard. So we'll employ a much more restrictive standard, we believe. And within the, I didn't show here, but we have 54 of these homes within a mile distance from this, within the same zones that we showed on the maps. And we've had it for nearly 40 years. And we've enjoyed a fantastic experience being in this central city location, and our tenants and occupants have been allowed peaceful enjoyment. So I think we're really attuned to that, and we really appreciate the consideration of being in this central location, and we understand the responsibility that goes with it.
Well, I appreciate that too, because as our home life has changed in the last couple of years, more work has been done at home and so forth. And then, okay, yeah. And so that's my biggest concern right now based on the presentation that was done today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Ramirez?
Thank you. And I do think Supervisor Long asked some good questions. I want to just say, if people aren't familiar on this board or the public, what RHNA is, it's Regional Housing Needs Assessment, which requires cities and counties to plan for, if not build, but plan for a certain number of units. And I believe, Mr. Colwitz, how many units are Oxnard? Would you remind me?
We're just over 8,500, 8,600,
In the cycle of, is it 5-6 years?
over an 8-year cycle.
Year cycle. And a lot of cities are very perturbed by that, I would say, because I participate in that SCAG. But really my question is, the Planning Commission supported this, correct?
That is correct.
Was that unanimous? If you know.
I don't recall if it was a unanimous or a 6-1 vote off the top of my head.
And I always like, what is, and I know this is not exactly our domain, but what is the proposal for affordable housing in this development?
The citywide requirement is for any project that has over 10 units, 10% of them must be affordable units. And this project is providing 10% of the units as affordable units, affordable deed restricted units.
And I will just say, let's get more than 10%. I don't get to vote on that ultimately, but I would like to see that. And just if the applicant or someone could say, I see Ms. Nieswander there, who's a great advocate for anything she proposes. What is the situation with the water? Because that always comes up. They have access to enough water to serve these homes, correct?
Supervisor Ramirez, that is correct. The city has enough water to provide these units.
All right, thank you. Those are my questions. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Supervisor. Dr. Fussell?
First of all, I want to thank you for a very smooth and good presentation. But from my point of view, I think you failed in all three areas: noise, safety, and airspace protection. We're bombarded every day from people complaining about noise. So we're going to get 1,000 more people to complain about noise. Now, in the presentation, you mentioned that you got a school, but the school should have never been there. Two wrongs doesn't make a right. And so we're just putting more and more people at risk for noise pollution, safety, and airspace. I am probably in the minority here, but I think we should stay with the business research part. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fussell. Councilmember Perello, I saw you unmute yourself.
Yes. I am an Oxnard City Councilman. I was elected as an Oxnard City Council, and I was appointed to the Airport Authority by the council. But when I serve on the Airport Authority, I am to wear the Airport Authority hat and do the job of the Airport Authority. I agree completely with Dr. Fussell. The area should not have been residential, but it is. And that's the direction that the city of Oxnard has. I beg your pardon. Let me retract that statement. That isn't the direction of the city of Oxnard. That is what the developer and the owners of the property have decided to do. They've asked for a change, and the city's allowing this to go on. And I appreciate the fact that slide 13 is up there, because I think we should put all the cards on the table. This is something that was an oversight, and it didn't get to the council because it forgot to go through the Airport Authority. There was an error. Things happen. People make mistakes. But I'm right now being bombarded by people that are asking questions about, wait a minute, what about the noise? What about this? What about that? I don't know if the rest of the members are talking about it. I mean, we've had a comment, and we're fortunate. We have a former councilman for Oxnard, current supervisor for Oxnard, and an airport authority. 3 different hats one person's wearing. I'm not the one vote to stop the project, but to ask the questions they need to be asked. Do we have somebody with this picture that is there that has an icon that they can use to assist, and I can direct it around? Because I do appreciate that I've been on this airport authority, and I challenged the former supervisor, Zaragoza, the current mayor, and the former mayor, Mr. Flynn, on the council when they didn't want to do certain things. But I said, you guys have approved. Can we please put slide 13 back? Thank you. You've approved housing development, and there's an issue with schools, and there's an issue with more housing coming in because we have what we need to do with infill. And I'm a supporter of SOAR, and that's one of the things that happens when we approve SOAR. You work to fill up what you have available. And apparently, there is not a market for what the property was originally designed for in the best and highest use for health, safety, and welfare for the residents of Oxnard. If we look at the green line where it said Southwest Park, on the green line, the Southwest Park, if we go to the right of that, just past that is the Oxnard Boys and Girls Club. That was something that was approved, a magnet for children. On the going left now, going to the west on the southwest, there is a plan for a senior center to go into that area. And just getting a little bit out, the Oxnard School District, in their wisdom or limited wisdom, bought a piece of property, if we can go up to the corner where Doris and Patterson would be, to build a junior high school and a grammar school. There is the potential, Dr. Fussell did not say this, but there is the potential for a disaster. I think that it is only fair. There are some new members on this body from Camarillo and Oxnard. It's only fair to bring these things up. The council takes positions. The market makes recommendations. We've had already a recommendation. They want more affordable housing. I'd rather not put affordable housing near a risky situation, but everyone has a different opinion. The questions that need to be asked: is this within the limits of what the legal law is? I trust the people that work for my city of Oxnard that the answer is yes. Can the city approve this without the airport's authority? I don't know. I don't know. I hope to get that answer. Will this be approved if it goes on a challenge to override the airport authority? I don't know that also. But I do know if we can put the icon on the Juan Laguna Soria school, please. That was denied. And the school board went to the state and got the denial overturned, and there's a school there. It's unfortunate that people build around airports, but they do. Some may think I've spoken too much. I don't think so. I think this needs to be aired, and it needs to be aired because just on the other side, we have individuals watching this. They're talking about changing the patterns of touch and go. If we just, while we have the icon going, show where the Teal Club project would potentially be. This is going to be a tremendous amount of homes, business, junior high school, and grammar school. There's a lot of things coming down the pipeline. And I think it's only fair to know what the hell the cards are on the table. Thank you, Chair, for letting me explain my feelings.
Thank you, Mr. Perello. Do we have any other comments from the authority or questions? Okay.
Madam Chair, if this is denied by the airport authority, is that the final say? That was a question. I hope to find out.
Councilmember Perello, Dave Nafee here. I could kind of set the stage with that. The reason that this was, it came before the city council a number of weeks ago, and in preparation for comments on this item, I was looking for the referral to the Airport Land Use Commission. And that's a role that's served by the Ventura County Transportation Commission. So they put that hat on and look at that. And their role is to identify to view the consistency with the compatible land use plan, the airport compatible land use plan. So that's a step that's coming. And that's the reason. It's not that that this couldn't be found to be conditionally acceptable, assuming the change in the general plan and the zoning changes. So if those are done, if that's a done deal, then the airport views through the plan, the compatible land use plan, that the conditions would be met. So the 25% coverage, the navigation easement, the fair use, or the fair disclosure, and the height and hazard zoning through the 7460, or the height and hazard assessment through the 7460. So I think those things are in place. So either way it goes, it doesn't seem like a deal killer. And so the Airport Land Use Commission would take this up. I believe they're going to do that on March 4th. And they may say that the general plan amendment and the zoning would not be consistent with the land use plan. And then what that does is it says it comes back to the city council, and you would have a different vote requirement, and it would be an override situation. So that's the mechanics of it. None of it is anything that needs to stop the project. It just changes the outcome, and people are on record saying that what is being planned at the airport is a departure from how it had been planned up to this point. But it seemed that it was a requirement that staff needed to kind of gently guide this back toward the Airport Land Use Commission so that they could properly determine the consistency and have the proper vote requirement of the city council for that. So if that's not clear, there's a bunch of people on the line who could refine that, but that's the way staff.
I appreciate, sir, the answer, and I believe you're doing your job. So I do understand that, and I really do. This is something that I know that Mr. Calhoun in the past and Mr. Fussell in the past have asked a lot of questions about these things, about the safety. And I appreciate you doing it. If I can make a recommendation in the future, if the airport authority is ever going to sit on a project like this, they have a map that may be just a little bit bigger than this. And the only reason I say this, because I got personal knowledge of two incidents. One, just on the other side of Ventura Road in the Oxnard Union High School, where a plane hit a baseball backstop and crashed. And the other one just on the other side of Doris, where a plane in a foggy night took out a chimney. I think that there should be something overlying this when we ask the public, and I'm not a pilot. I just know when I get in an airplane, I want to walk out. When I get out of the airplane, I want to walk away. But I think it would be beneficial to just show the facts of life. Where have we had incidents within a certain area of this spot? You did an excellent job with the presentation of this, and I have to compliment the staff for the city of Oxnard and the developers, whatever they're doing here. But I think that would be one thing separate and aside for the airport authority, management of the Ventura County airports, to make sure that the people that sit on this board don't ever forget that. That's my final comment. Thank you, and I appreciate your explanation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Perillo. Before I offer some comments, I believe I see a hand raised from Kate and then Randall.
Thank you. My name is Kate Nicewinder. I'm working with the applicant team. I just wanted to make a small comment. We have to deal with the airport land use plans as written, not as perhaps some of the commission members would like to see them rewritten. We've been relying on these documents as approved, and having been approved, I believe this version is from 2000. This version is what we're working with. And this version of the land use plan is the one that says that there is not an issue with noise if we're outside the 65 dB or 60 dB contour, which we are completely outside that contour. Technically, we wouldn't have to put in mitigations based on the existing land use plan, but we've put in all the mitigations that the city was, that we offered dual pane windows and things like this. The city offered some more. We accepted all of those. So we've actually done more than the airport land use plan as written requires. As far as safety compatibility is concerned, the same situation applies, that we were supposed to do 25-foot height limitations, 25% land use coverage. I mean, there's things that are in here that we were required to do and we have done. As for the traffic protection zone, the TPZ, it says specifically in the land use plan that yes, if we are within the traffic pattern zone, the TPZ, that a residential use is acceptable if we do certain things. We did all those things. So we have met each and every requirement of the land use plan as written. And I hear that there are some concerns about safety and there are some concerns about noise. That's understandable. But as written, we've met every requirement of this plan. And that's what we have to, as developers, work with. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Before I go to Randall, Dr. Fussell, I'm not sure if you left your hand up from your earlier comments or if you had anything else to add.
I have something else to add. Responding to the last comment, you've done everything consistent with a 20-year plan. We've had people really complaining within the last several months in the last few years, and we're not addressing that. I understand from a legal perspective, you have to go by what's written, but that's 20 years old and it's outdated. So as I mentioned, the presentation was good, but it failed sourly in all three areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fussell. Mr. Randall, go ahead.
Just a quick comment. I'm generally a proponent of development, especially housing, which is so badly needed. But I'm just wondering about developments around Santa Monica Airport over the years and the airport authority there approving all the housing, which is now condemning the Santa Monica Airport to what I believe is its ultimate demise in the very near future. And I just have to wonder if we're not running the risk of heading that way at Oxnard by allowing housing to encroach on the airport.
Thank you. Is there someone who can answer?
Yeah, Chair, this is Keith from the airport. There's not really something I can answer, you know, how that history specifically related to this. You could draw similar lines or concerns. I would understand that.
Thank you, Mr. Freitas. And I think there's oh, I see Mr. John, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to offer one more thing. I think we are very, very interested in this area, and we share a lot of the same concerns. I have a strong aviation connection as well. So it's not done with an absence of all of these thoughts, which I take full-heartedly and I appreciate. One thing that would help a little for some of these concerns is when we did the environmental, there was over 5 million trips for a commercial located site versus the residential were proposed, and the density we proposed is 1.9 million. So there's a lot of different ways to look at factors that would be mitigants to help minimize concerns for maybe something that could be that would be allowable that in the event of some tragedy, God forbid, wouldn't provide as much safety as what we're providing. One other thing that one of the members talked about water. There was a water study done, and we're using with this facility versus a commercial facility, a substantially less than half, way less than half of the utilization that could be used commercially. So there's a lot of things that we've focused on to try to bring what we believe would be the best issue before we asked for this. So we didn't indiscriminately or do without a lot of thought and a lot of care. And I do thank everybody for their comments and appreciate what has been said. So I offer that up as well.
Thank you for those comments. There's definitely a lot of good points that everyone has brought up, especially considering what we have been hearing on the authority in the past year with concerns about noise. At the same time, as Councilmember Perello mentioned and Supervisor Ramirez, the issue around housing is one that all cities are grappling with, and we're certainly conscious of that. Given what decision we have in front of us today is on the airport comprehensive land use plan, and as I am understanding from staff, it does meet that. And I would also add, as was also mentioned by another speaker, by Ms. Neiswender, sitting on this authority, we all understand the issues around safety, and we get it. We get the issues around safety within the airport areas. And if we want to ensure that we don't repeat the development of projects with housing, schools, then we need to find a way to change what regulations and what authority is going to be matching the projects that are coming before us. So with that, if there are no other comments or questions, Supervisor Ramirez, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you said it very well, Chair Lopez, what the situation is and what Ms. Neiswender said. The developers complied with the law as it, not necessarily the way we'd like it, but the way it is. And to reject this based on what we would like, I think would potentially cause us more problems in the future. I know this area very well. I passed by today specifically to look at it, and it is right smack in the middle of lots of other homes. Our community needs homes, and we've got some obligations to fulfill. And I know that I was on council, as was at least Mr. Perello, and perhaps I don't think you were there yet, Ms. Lopez. Possibly you were, when the community was up in arms about a car wash that is there now. And the car wash, what was being opposed by the neighbors was they thought promised a business research park, but the reality was no one wanted to develop a business research park. And in fact, our office vacancy in the county is pretty high. And so there's simply no market for it. So what does the landowner do? It comes up with proposals that meet the standards, and the city has a need. We have a need for housing. I would love to see more affordable. I think it's very important that people who are buying, renting, understand where they're going, and not later say, hey, I didn't know there was an airport here. I didn't know we were going to see planes. I used to sit in the city manager's office when we had our meetings, and the planes would almost look like we were going to hit the building. They weren't, but that was the sensation. So people just really do need to be properly informed of where they're moving and what the situation is that they may not like. But I think I am going to support this. I respect everybody's opinion about safety and why do we do it. We have to have more housing. And I think that if we didn't do this, or if the city didn't do this or approve it, I think there might be some problems down the road. So I would like to make a motion to support this project.
Thank you. And Supervisor Long, did you want to add any comments?
Yes, and I appreciate the comments of Supervisor Ramirez and you, Chair. The question I had, I really appreciated what has been, I don't remember what page it was on, of the mitigations that was presented, especially 188, talking about the waiver that has to be signed by those that live there. My question, I didn't remember, and if maybe you could reiterate, is the traffic study. Was that done with regards to Councilmember Perillo had stated the school, and there's a Boys and Girls Club. They did try to put a senior center there. In regards to the airport, I just wanted to confirm that that was done. If anyone could, maybe Carnesal or Neiswinder, someone. Scott.
Supervisor Long, I'll go ahead and take that one. The traffic study that had been done was for this project and was comparing the change of the business research park land use designation to the residential land use change. And what we saw was by a factor of there's a significant change in the amount of trips that would not happen with the development of this as a residential project. So the city's perspective, from the staff perspective, is this is a much less intense development than otherwise would have been proposed.
I think that's good for our airport commission to know. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. And before we move forward, I just want to confirm if there's any any additional public speakers on this. I don't think I see any, but I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything as I'm using my phone.
Chair Lopez, no, I do not see.
Okay, great, thank you. So we do have a motion from Supervisor Ramirez, and I will go ahead and second it. Can we take a roll call vote, please?
And Chair Lopez, just to clarify, is the motion to recommend that the development is an acceptable land use and consistent with the adopted airport comprehensive land use plan?
Yes.
Thank you. For the roll call, Supervisor Long.
Yes, and I think it's also to receive and file the presentation, correct?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Ramirez.
Yes.
Councilmember Perillo.
No.
Councilmember Lopez.
Yes.
Eugene Fussell.
No.
That motion passes 3-2.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Colwitz, and the city staff, as well as the applicant for participating in this and the information. Thank you to the airport authority or airport staff as well for the information and clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have item C, the adoption of resolution number 6 for the remote teleconferencing of meetings for the airport authority for a 30-day period. Supervisor Ramirez?
Unless there's discussion, I'd like to move to support this resolution.
If that is a motion, I'll second it.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the authority members? And no public comment? Okay, can we?
None, yes.
Thank you. All right, can we take a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Supervisor Long.
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Perillo.
Yes.
Chair Lopez.
Yes.
Eugene Fussell.
Yes.
And that motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. And I will go ahead and pass it back to Chair Santangelo.
Thank you, Chair Lopez. And that will bring us to item D, which is the adoption of resolution number 6, authorizing remote teleconference meetings of the Camarillo Airport Authority for a 30-day period. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the recommended action.
I'll second it.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mayor Molche and a second by Mr. Bear. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez,
Yes.
Mayor Molche,
Yes.
Chair Santangelo,
Yes.
Scott Barrett.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
And I just want to say that if everybody saw that the indoor mask requirement will be lifted February 16th. So maybe we'll be back to in-person meetings soon. And with that, let's move on to Director's Report. Mr. Freitas.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few items. First, wanted to recognize 3 people that had served decades on the Airport Authority and the public member and alternate member, Bill Thomas, Mike Hodson, and Walter Calhoun. As we've talked about, they in service for decades, both airports, Camarillo and Oxnard, and we did a plaque for each of them, which we will get to them as soon as we can, but wanted to thank them and recognize them for many years of service to the authorities. That's the first item.
If I could just say, just thank you very much for your service. We talked about it when the change of guards vote happened last January, but really just appreciate everyone's hard work on this commission and thank you for their service. This was really nice to be able to give that to them, Keith. Thank you.
And Mr. Director, Mr. Thomas has been promoted. I'm not sure if he wanted to say anything or not, but he's in the queue if need be.
I don't know Bill that well, but I'm guessing Bill would like to say something.
Well, can you hear me? I'm unmuted, but I see no camera, so I'm invisible. I appreciate the appreciation. I would say that tonight you're seeing one of the key challenges that the new airport authority members are going to be dealing with at both cities, which is how do you handle taking care of your community citizens and protecting the airports from being encroached and essentially gone. And if you look at Ventura County in the last 50 years, we're probably half the number of airports we were then. And I don't believe you'll see any new ones. And so when someone brags that we have 4 airports in Ventura County, I think you should be saying we only have 4. So good luck and keep them viable, because the actions that take place on encroachment, once it happens, you can't get it back. Thanks.
Okay. Any others? Dave?
No, that I believe that was among those attending who are honored tonight.
All right, on to the next item, recognition of a longtime airport tenant, Art Phillips. Came to Camarillo in 1979. Long time he passed away on January 6th of this year. So I just want to recognize him and being a longtime member of the family, airport family. Next item, Dave, we had a nice visit from Congresswoman Brownlee in early January. And she basically just wanted to express her continued support of both Oxnard and Camarillo airports. And with the new federal infrastructure dollars out there, would work hard to try to see that we got additional dollars for the 2 airports. So it was good to have a visit with our local congresswoman. Next item, noise
I'd like to
efforts.
speak. I'd like to speak, please. I've got my hand up here. And I don't want to be rude, but somebody's not looking at the screen. I would like to very much thank all the time, trouble, effort that Mr. Calhoun, Mr. Hodson, and Mr. Thomas have provided to this community. Their background as pilots have helped individuals, specifically me, who doesn't know anything about, planes, and they would bring up questions and they would ask questions. I wouldn't have thought of it in 100 years. And that type of knowledge, I hope we never lose from this board. And again, Mr. Calhoun, Mr. Hodson, and Mr. Thomas, thank you very much. And thank you for letting me say that.
Any other comments? This looks like Supervisor Ramirez.
But I also have seen Mr. Bear with his hand up for a while, and I think our chair is having some difficulty because she's on the phone. So I'll defer to him and then make my comments.
Thank you, Supervisor. I wanted to be the latest to pile on the Let's Thank Bill Thomas train. Bill is an extraordinary asset to Camarillo aviation. But what a lot of people don't know is he's a retired naval aviator with 4,500 hours of flight time and 543 carrier landings. So when Bill talks, he knows from what he's speaking. He's also the air boss for Wings Over Camarillo, which is our fantastic air show. And Bill, it's no secret that I'm the outgoing or the former president of COHOTA. And one of the last things I did before resigning was I got a permission to commission an award for you, and I'll try to show it on my camera. It's not showing it up very well. There you go. It's 2 wings. It's a crystal award with 2 wings on the top, signifying your contributions to Camarillo aviation, and the inscription says, "Presented to Bill Thomas for exemplary service to the Camarillo aviation community from the Camarillo Oxnard Hangar Owners and Tenants Association." And Bill, I'm acutely aware of the big shoes I'm stepping into. I hope you and your institutional knowledge will be available to all of us. And I will get in touch with you offline to make arrangements to get you this award. And we're very grateful for your service. Thank you.
And I'll just pick up and say, I echo all of those comments about our members who are leaving us. Thank you for your service and all your great work and bringing things to our attention, those of us who are not pilots, not involved in aviation, but have a job to do. And it helps to have your information provided to us. Appreciate it. Good luck and have a wonderful retirement.
Retirement.
Looks like Bill has his hand up still.
Bill, did you have something more to say?
No, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that the hand is the only thing I have on the screen. So I apologize that talking about being a pilot in a UAV. That's what I feel like tonight. Anyway, thank you. Thanks for all the comments. I appreciate it.
We stipulate you didn't get to show off your Hawaiian shirt.
Moving on, update noise efforts. We continue to work with community members. Most recently, spoke with local flight school up at Santa Paula Airport, CP Aviation. One of their aircraft was triggered a significant number of noise complaints. So we worked with the flight school owners, and they were willing and open to adding the Fly Neighborly link from Ventura County to their website, which was put in place a week ago. And then internally, we're continuing to work to hire staff specifically to address and focus on noise issues for the 2 airports, and looking at new equipment as well to help us with flight tracking of airplanes again at both airports. Particularly, our focus at this point is Oxnard. Joint powers agreement, that's been on the agenda for a while. Most recently, the county executive officer, Mike Powers, wrote a letter to the city manager of Camarillo outlining that we were no longer pursuing any discussions regarding amendment or changes to the joint powers agreement, one, and also that the county was not currently or looking in the future to bring scheduled airline service nor air cargo service to Camarillo Airport. And at this point, that appears to be well received by the city. We continue communication and working on our relationship, but it seems to be in a good direction at this point. Item you heard earlier was the private hangar lease agreement. I do believe we are fairly close. We still have some items that when I first started 3 months ago, the sticking points were mandatory security stickers on all vehicles. That has been removed. And then Cohoda was asking for some sort of arbitration clause in the agreement, which has been added. Now we're working on refining what that says. So again, we're hopeful that it is very close. They've asked to kind of push this out so they could bring it to their general membership meeting, which is on or about, I think it's March 16th. And so I would then expect that we bring the document when we are at agreement sometime in April is what I'm shooting for the authority. Last couple items, just to let you know, animal services for the county has about a 4.5 acre site that they lease property from the airport in our business park. They're looking to rebuild on that site and expand. There's a couple parcels adjacent to them. They might need some additional 3 or so acres, and that we believe we're able to accommodate them. So they're in the process of design and then obviously securing funding for that. But we do see an opportunity to partner with them to give them some additional space and make that, at least from that perspective, happen. Cloud 9, the development project along Los Postos Road. Just talked with the city manager last night. It looks like we are, the project is through most of the application process, and they're expecting to bring that to their city council on or about March 9th. So I think that project is close to getting through the process. And then the last is, I'm sure all of you know, Super Bowl is happening this weekend. What that means is significant air traffic in the LA region and would include both Oxnard and Camarillo airports. Starting basically tomorrow, goes all the way through midday Monday. Lots of folks flying in for the, several days of events, but we should expect more than normal air traffic and aircraft operations at both airports for the next 4 or so days. And that's all I have. If there's any specific questions on that.
Keith, I have one question.
Mayor, yes, sir.
Do you have anything about, this is something I think Bill brought up last week too, or last meeting, the AVEX, and since that was acquired, if there was any change in status?
Yes, we don't have anything. We're working on that specifically. There was also a question about fueling, and they are continuing to work on that self-fueling island. And we don't have specifics on a date for repair, but they are currently working on that as well. It was a tank issue, and then they had an issue with the dispenser. So the tank issue has been resolved. They're still trying to get, the supply chain is affecting all kinds of things, including things like this repair. So they're in process, but they don't have a date for us yet. Hope to have that for you by next meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions? If not, I'm going to move on. Items 8 and 9 are informational only at this time. So we'll move on to authority comments. Would anybody, Scott, go ahead.
I wanted to comment on the hangar lease. I know Director Freitas just brought it up briefly, and he's right that they are making great progress, and everybody has done great work. The people from Cohota and the Department of Airports. But I have a concern. I've had a chance to review the latest mediation language proposed by the county, and frankly, in its present form, it's not something I would support. It's over-lawyered and it's too complicated. Mediation's a simple process, which levels the playing field for the parties to the agreement. And I've been a lawyer nearly 32 years, and I've written mediation clauses, and I've mediated dozens of cases, and I've never seen a mediation clause that's as complicated as this one. And frankly, there's so many trap doors for the dominant party to avoid mediation in this agreement. It's just not something I'd support. A mediation provision can be accomplished in just a few sentences, maybe with a couple of carve outs, but all it takes is a couple of sentences. It's that simple. And the literally two-page proposal that's being floated is just not something I can see myself supporting. Perhaps County Council and Cohota's attorney, Ms. McAdam, can take another look at it, come up with something that's more in line with the spirit of leveling the playing field, and come up with what would be a fair provision for the county and for the tenants. That is something that's simple, clean, easy to read, and requires, with some exceptions, requires both parties to engage in good faith mediation.
Thank you, Mr. Bear. Does anybody else have comments?
I have one. I just want to echo and thank Keith and Department of Airports. I will echo that the communication between the city of Camarillo and Department of Airports, and namely Keith, has been really great since he's come on board. And so I speak to Greg often, our city manager, and I hear nothing but compliments that we have open lines of communication. So it is very much appreciated. So thank you.
Councilmember Pearl.
Thank you. I appreciate the comments that we've heard tonight. This has been, for me, it's been an interesting meeting, not just the part that I was involved in speaking on. The individual that just mentioned the issue about the mediation, and he's an attorney with years of experience, and how he described it was ear-opening to me. I don't believe I can ever forget that if there is a mediation, a negotiation, a dispute, the gorilla in the room is the Ventura County. They're the much larger entity. Whether you're a hangar owner or a business operating on their site or a city working with the county, they are the large entity in the ball game. So your points, I appreciate you expressing that and sharing that with the board. The individual that mentioned his experience being an airline pilot and with the views on how things are changing with the airlines, I found that to be extremely interesting. I know there's a lot of people that are hoping that's not the truth. I want to thank the general manager for sharing with us his contact with the Santa Paula school and putting the flying neighborly, they agreeing to put in a flying neighborly. That's good, because I want the general manager to understand something. I did not know this until some of the people that are the most aggressive in looking to the noise complaints and have caused a lot of interest to be piqued and a lot of angst to be shared, found one big thing, that the complaints that had been lodged over years were never documented. And when that came to light, everything changed with respect to that group, those individuals, the people that were looking to that when they found out something had not been shared that there should have been, and it's something that, we're going to pay a price on. And the price is probably a better situation. There are some people in my mind that when they buy near an airport, there should be some common sense expectation you're going to hear an airplane. But by the same token, it shouldn't be that you hear an airplane every 5 minutes, especially over your house flying in circles. That's my view. The issues tonight, when we heard the developer talk about the soundproofing and the windows, I own a home that had an upgrade on the soundproofing in the windows because I was within a proximity to the freeway. The comment that was made by one of the board members tonight, we don't want people to be in a spot where later on they move in, buy the facility, and the developer is not there to take care of the problem as it arises later on. We want to make sure, to the best of our ability, we take care of it to start with. And on that closing note, that is one reason that I brought up the issues that I did tonight on that matter. I am a councilman from that city. We need housing. The city is moving forward the best they can, but there are things that we need to be aware of. And when we don't bring those to the public's attention, and more importantly, to the people that are making decisions and working for the public, we do not serve that body well. And I appreciate working this board. I appreciate what's going on, but I am very grateful that I'm able to be on a board where it seems that we have been able to get some people that are sharing their information with the board members, because some of the information that the board is sharing with these board members, myself specifically, I was not in knowledge of. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I believe Supervisor Ramirez is next.
Very quickly, I wanted to say that the issue of encroachment in our Camarillo and, well, particularly Oxnard Airport is important, but you should probably be aware, and if you're not already, that there's a big concern for encroachment at the naval base. And during my time on Oxnard City Council, I was in the minority and voted against a big housing project that would have encroached and made it more difficult, perhaps, for the Navy to conduct air operations. That ultimately went to court. The majority of the council at that time supported the housing project. It's called South Shore. And the court decided that the city had not done a proper EIR. But what was somewhat missing was the voice of the Navy during that process, saying they were concerned that more housing there would potentially cause the base to have problems and potentially shut down because of complaints of new tenants. So luckily that didn't happen, something we have to be concerned about, because the naval base is such a great asset to our county, to our nation. I think it's quite a different kettle of fish, as they say, when we're talking about Navy base encroachment. Plus, the Navy has been a great steward of Ormond Beach, and they're also concerned about security there. And that's something I intend to try to work on in my in the newly configured District 5, which now does contain Ormond Beach, something I've been working on for a long time, the restoration there, the decommissioning of the power plant ultimately, and hopefully the restoration of Ormond Beach and the getting rid of the slag heap, Halico. So we have a lot of challenges in Oxnard, and they do somewhat touch our airports. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, next, Randall Sonata.
I just wanted to briefly mention that we are all very concerned about maintaining safety around our airports. And one of the components of safe flight is allowing the pilots to practice their touch and goes and their landings. And that means that we do need to be mindful of the necessity for them to be making circles around the airport. And so that's a safety matter, and I'd like us to keep that in mind. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Scott, I saw your hand up before. Did you change your mind?
Well, I've gone back and forth. I'll be brief. I wanted to follow up on what Councilmember Perello said a little bit about the idea of mediation is it levels the playing field. The minute this goes to litigation, the Tenant is behind the 8 ball. The county's got limitless resources, essentially, and the tenant's going to be paying thousands of dollars in legal fees. So the idea is to try to nip things in the bud before they become litigation, and that's the purpose of mediation. And the mediation provision that I've seen that I wouldn't support just has too many carve-outs. It's too complicated. It just needs to, the process needs to be simplified, and it's an easy process once you have the right provision. And I'd be happy to work with the parties if they wanted to, but it doesn't need to be 2 pages of legalese. It's just too complicated.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other members who would like to speak? Okay, I will. I want to join in the appreciation and thanks for Bill Thomas, Walter Calhoun, and Mike Hudson. They were involved for so many years before my time, and they really made it. They welcomed me, first of all, when I walked out and introduced myself as a nervous first-time council member. But they've really helped set the tone and the foundation of this group. And so I just really want to appreciate their time, and I'm glad we were able to honor them tonight. And I also just wanted to echo what Mayor Mulchay said about the feeling of a new relationship between the airport and the city of Camarillo. Just improved communication, and it feels better right now. And so I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I know I'm really looking forward to the future and to seeing where we're going, all of this. So, more to be seen. And if there aren't any other comments, then I think we will go ahead and adjourn. And our next meeting is March 10th, 2022, location to be determined. And with that, we'll adjourn.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
the patience.
Good night, all.
Have a great night.